I get to speak twice in a row, which is pretty cool, because the guy who spoke last week was pretty good. What an honor. Honestly, what an honor for me to speak. And I want to thank my pastors for trusting me, for allowing me, for giving me the opportunity to speak to my church. And they're not here, but I speak as if they are. I love them. Can we show some appreciation for our pastors? Pastors Kevin and Beth, I love you. And I gotta be honest, guys, this week for me has been odd because my wife and my 3 kids, they left for Ohio on Monday afternoon, so I've had a whole week just to myself. I haven't known what to do. I found myself yesterday mopping the floor, and I realized, how is this happening? And then I know how. My wife sent me a subliminal message because before she left, she just very conveniently brought down the mop bucket and the mop, and she just placed it against the wall, and then she left and said, "See ya." And so I actually did. I mopped the floor. I told her, I said, "Babe, I mopped the floor." And she said, "I knew you would," because she knew. She placed it in me. And so I want to say hi to my family. They're watching online. Hi, my beautiful wife, Morgan. Hi, Madeline. Hi, Zeke. Hi, Lincoln. I love you guys. I miss you. I will see you very soon. And I'm going to get right into the message. Is that okay? Yeah. Last Sunday, after I'd spoken the second service, I was in the lobby. And a very nice woman came up to me and she held on to my arm. And she began to say, "Emmett, I just want to thank you for that message. That message was very good. It resonated with me." And she was telling me things. And how many of us know that sometimes when someone's speaking or saying something to you, you can tell that there's a but coming, right? There's a but just about to come. And I want you to know this woman was very sweet and very nice. And she had tears in her eyes as she said, "Thank you for that message." But then she said, "But I just feel that God has turned his back on me." And then she began to share with me why. She began to tell me the struggle. She began to tell me the sorrow. She began to tell me the pain and the hurt that she had been in. And she said, "I just feel that God has turned his back on me." And I bet she's not the only one who's ever felt that way before. Because we all are going to go through things in our life that are hard, that are terrible tragedies, and natural questions will come. Questions like, why is this happening, God? How is this happening? But then even deeper, harder questions come. God, why are you allowing this to happen? Don't you see that I'm in pain, God? Don't you see that I'm crying out to you, God? Don't you see that I'm suffering, God? Don't you see that I need you, God? And so for this whole week, I've had this weight in my stomach because this topic that I speak on today, I know it's sensitive and I know it can be hard and I know it can be vulnerable. But I want to talk about it, and if I could sum up all those questions, I'd sum it up in this one question that we're going to talk about today. Why do bad things happen? Why do bad things happen? Because I want to help bring answers to that. I want to help point you to the answer. I want to help show where hope and freedom can come, because I believe there's people in here who need to know that it's not God that caused your pain and your heartbreak and your loss. I believe there's people in here who have built up a case. They've built up an argument against God because of something that happened to them. I believe there's people in here who feel just like that lady felt, that God has turned his back on you. And I believe there's people here today and online watching who right now you are in the middle of struggling through something and you're asking those questions already. Why is this happening? I want to help point you to the answers. I want to help show you where the answers are. So let's talk about it. Why do bad things happen? Here's my first, most simple answer. Why bad things happen. We live in a broken world. The world we live in isn't perfect. The world that we live in is broken. It's not right. We weren't born into a perfect, right world. It's not right, it's broken, and it's imperfect because of sin. We were all born into this world of sin. We can't escape from that truth. We can't ignore it either. In the first book of the Bible, in Genesis, we meet Adam. And he sinned against God. It's known as the original sin, as the first sin. And because of that first original sin, the world became broken. In Romans chapter 5, verse 12, it puts it simply like this. When Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death. So death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. We live in a broken world because of that first original sin. Things aren't fair in a broken world, are they? Things will hurt you in a broken world. Tragedies will happen in a broken world. Part of the answer as to why bad things happen is simply because we live in a broken world where it's going to happen. We need an answer, and that's where Jesus comes in. So when these bad things happen, it's not God up in heaven saying, let's make this happen to that person today. It's the opposite. God is the answer to our problems. I remember the first time I realized that being a Christian didn't mean that everything was easy, right? How many of you remember when you first became a Christian and it was like, boom, cloud nine, nothing can stop you. And then you realize really fast, there's still trouble when you're a Christian. It's not always easy when you're a Christian. I was 18 years old and I felt God tell me very clearly that he wanted me to go to Hillsong Bible College all the way in Sydney, Australia. And I was on cloud nine. Nothing could stop me. I was a brand new on fire for Christian, and I couldn't just wait to get there. And I told my mom about it, and my mom was so excited. And I met this beautiful girl named Morgan who I found out was going to this Bible college as well. She later became my wife. What's up? We have 3 kids. You know. And so, and then on top of that, one of my great friends was going to go as well. And on top of that, some of her great friends were going to go. So before we know it, there was a group of 5 of us. And we were all going to go to Hillsong Bible College across the world. It was so exciting. And it was cool because all of my friends' parents were totally on board. All of my friends' parents were excited and eager and praying for them, except for my dad. I remember going to him the first time and saying, Dad, and I'd built it up, he's going to say yes. I know it. How could he say no? Because this is what God told me, and this is a perfect world because I'm a Christian, and everything's going to work out well. And I went to him and I said, Dad, I just want you to know this is what God's told me, and I'm going to go to Hillsong Bible College in Sydney, Australia. And he looked at me and he said, never. And I went to my room right after that, and I was confused, and I was angry at God, and I was mad. I remember being in my car later in that week, and I was thinking about all my friends and how their parents were supportive and how they had it so easy. And I remember hitting my fist against the car and saying, this isn't fair. Sometimes, out of the unfairness that we live in a broken world, what happens is we take a step closer to God. How many times have you been going through something that isn't fair, it isn't right, and because of it, it actually makes you step closer into God? I had to step closer into God when my dad told me no. I had to step closer into his presence. I had to step closer into praying to him and reading the Bible because I knew this is what God had told me and I would do it. And so I had to step closer. And how many of us know that it's only God that can take what is a broken situation and make it into a blessing? It's only God I call it the God switch. How many of you have gone through a terrible situation and then later you find out that God has turned what was ashes into a blessing? Only God can do the God switch. See, sometimes we have to remember that just because we live in a broken world, God can bring healing to it. John 16, verse 33, here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. We live in a broken world, but never forget that we have the God who overcame it. Your tragedy, your pain, your hurt that you're going through, it's not that God has turned his back on you. It's not that God doesn't care if he doesn't love you. It's that God's your answer for you. Why do bad things happen? Here's my second answer, and this is the answer that no one likes. Why do bad things happen? Because we have free will. You mean I can cause my own problems? Yes. Yes, you can. You mean I can make a decision that could hurt me in my future? Absolutely you can. Absolutely. God designed us, God created us, and God gave us a gift that we can make our own decisions and make our own free will happen. And how many of us know that our free will, our ability to make our own decisions can cause some very serious problems? Why do bad things happen, we ask? Sometimes bad things happen because you just did a terrible decision. Sometimes bad things happen because you did something 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 months ago, last week, and now it's affecting you right now. Sometimes that's how bad things happen. Some of you have made terrible decisions to be Washington Redskins fans. You liked that one, didn't you, Alan? Let me go ahead and insert my per contract Chick-fil-A story right now because I have an agreement, a 6-month sponsorship deal. I worked at Chick-fil-A growing up. It was my first real job. And I'd been working there for about 2 years. I'd learned the ropes, knew everything, knew how things worked. And I knew that a lot of the people who I worked with were giving away free food to friends and to people who were going through the drive-thru and whatnot. And so one day I thought to myself, I'm going to do that. And it was the only time I did it. And I remember one of my best friends was out in the lobby of Chick-fil-A, and so I casually grabbed the Chick-fil-A, to-go bag, and I casually put some Chick-fil-A sandwiches in it, and then I casually put some fries in there and some nuggets in there, and then, I casually just walked out of the back and casually walked into the lobby and casually handed off this bag of free food to my best friend, and he casually walked out the door, and I thought, man, I'm awesome. I'm the coolest. I'm the bestest friend. And then about 2 hours later, my manager casually called me into his office. He casually asked me to sit down. And he casually showed me a videotape. And he said, "What happened here, Emmett?" And I said, he had ordered food and I was just giving it to him. I started to lie. And he said, "No, you didn't." And then he had tears in his eyes. And he said, "Emmett, I already called our owner, and he's going to meet with you tomorrow morning, and I don't know what's going to happen, but you should go ahead and leave." So I got my stuff, and I left. And then the next morning, I walk into the office, and Jason, the owner, sits me down, and I could tell even he was upset. He was disappointed. He was frustrated. And he said, "Emmett, I'm going to have to fire you." He fired me right then and there. And you see, I had every opportunity to try to get angry in that moment, right? Well, everyone's doing it, Jason. Everyone is giving away for food. You're just making me the example right now, but I did it because I knew I had messed up. Some of us have made decisions that are bad, and you're in a mess right now. But Jesus can restore anything. Jesus can bring any hope back into a situation. You're thinking, well, I've messed up too bad. Well, you haven't. But I will go ahead and ask you the hard question. You're sitting here going, I'm in a bad situation. Is it possible that you're in that bad situation because of something that you did? And if it is, God can still restore it. God can still bring it together. God takes this beautiful mess that we can be sometimes, and he turns it from ash into beauty. He turns it from death into life. He can still restore a marriage. He can still restore strength, peace, healing. He can do it. But the first step, when you realize that you made your own mistake, the first step is you own it. You admit, I did that. I called Jason, the owner, about 6 or 12 months after I lost my job, and I said, "Jason, I just want you to know if I could get my job back, I would really appreciate it." I also wrote him a letter, and I owned up to everything. And I said, "I know that I did this. I know it was wrong." And I said, "I just want you to know, even if you tell me no, I understand, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. And thank you for the opportunity for letting me work for you for this time." And so I called him, right, and I told him that. He still told me no. But then about an hour later, he called me back. He said, you know what, Emmett, I could use you. And then 6 months later, you want to know what happened? The best friend who I gave free food to, he got hired too. Isn't that cool how God can restore? You think you're sitting in a broken situation, but he can rebuild it. Why do bad things happen? We live in a broken world. We have been given free will. And number 3, why do bad things happen? We have an enemy. Some of you have been carrying around this pain and this anger and this vendetta against God because of something that happened to you. You blame God for it. You push it on God. You've created this perfect argument, haven't you? It's a perfect argument because you already blame God. So anything bad that happens, it's just easier to blame God anyways. There's no room for anyone to debate you. It's a perfect argument. What if I told you that you're mad at the wrong person? You're blaming the wrong person. We have an enemy in this life, and his purpose is only to do 3 things. The thief comes in John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. He wants to steal anything, kill anything, destroy anything that even resembles the hope of Jesus. And if he can't do it through stealing, if he can't do it through killing, if he can't do it through destroying, he's going to do it through lying. And he'll whisper lies like this. If God is a good God, why did he allow this to happen? If God really loved you, surely he wouldn't have allowed this to happen. If. I hate the word if. And if the devil's whispering those lies to you, you need to stop him and you need to remind him that there is no if when it comes to God's goodness. If implies a question. If implies a doubt. If implies that it could be or it couldn't be. There is no if God is a good God. There is no if God is a faithful God. There is no if. It is not up in the air. It is not up to chance. God is good and he is faithful. I can tell you why. Because in Hebrews 13 verse 5, it tells us so. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. There's no if in that statement. There's no you have to do this first or you have to say that second. It's just I am faithful and I am true. And I want to go ahead and answer the question for those of you who are saying, well, God has turned his back on me. What if I were to tell you that God can't turn his back on you? What if I were to tell you that it goes against God's own will to turn his back on you? He can't. He physically can't. He would never, because you are his child and he gave up his son so that you could have freedom. And so you are worth so much more. So this whole thing of God has turned his back on me, it's not even possible. It can't happen. Now that I've given you 3 answers as to why bad things happen, let's do a little recap, shall we? We live in a broken world. Remember that point? That was a good one. We have free will. That was a tough one. We have an enemy. That makes sense. And now that I've given us the answers, I now want to talk to the person who's asking that question. And I know what you're thinking. I already know what you're thinking. Those answers are too easy, right? Those answers were way too easy. Those answers don't give you what you want to hear. I mean, it makes sense. Yes, we live in a broken world. Yes, we have free will. Yes, we have an enemy. I get that. But it's not what you want to hear. You want something more. Because for you, you're angry. For you, you're hurting. For you, it's not fair. For you, you went through a tragedy, a heartbreaking loss, and now, if you're a little honest with yourself, you've become a little bitter. No longer do you say, God, where are you? But it's turned into, God, where were you? No longer are you saying, God, I need you, but it's turned into, God, I needed you. Because you're stuck in that situation. You're stuck in that pain. You're stuck in that heartbreak and that loss and that tragedy. And you're angry with it Because you were the one who prayed to God daily. You were the one who looked to God for everything in your life. You were the one who trusted him. He was supposed to come through. He was supposed to be the miracle maker. He was supposed to provide the health and the healing. And you're sitting here and you're going, it's just not fair. If you've never met my mom, she is a true saint. She is an angel. She's the type of mom where whenever I had friends come over, she'd ask if she could make us some sandwiches. And they were delicious sandwiches. They were cut corner to corner, triangle side. You know what I'm talking about. Crust already taken off. I'm 16, 17 years old. She's still making me sandwiches with my friends. She's asking, sweetheart, do you want some sandwiches? And I'm like, Mom, no, I'm with my boys, you know. And she doesn't care. She calls me sweetheart, never stops. To this day, she calls me sweetheart. And I was talking to her this week about what I was speaking on because I felt this heaviness and this weight because I knew how real this topic is. I knew how hard it would be to talk about because I know that every single one of you have something that you've struggled with where you've had these questions. And so I thought, Mom, I just want you to listen to what I'm talking about. And she said, sweetheart, you can share my story. And she said, my God's glory story. My mom, when I was 10 years old, went on a missions trip to China. And if you know anything about China, you know that Christianity and talking about it's not allowed. And so they actually had to train for it and they had to go in as missionaries, but they couldn't call themselves missionaries. They had to go in as teachers to help teach the English language. And so that's actually what they trained to do. And they were trained that they couldn't talk about Jesus unless someone asked them about it first. And even then, they still had to be very protective and secretive about it because the place where they were going was in a rural part of China in a village. It was hundreds of miles from any real big city. And so for months, my mom gathered with the team going to the church and they would train and they would prepare and they would pray. And then my mom found out 3 months before the trip that she was pregnant. And so she went to her doctor when she found out. She said, I'm going on a missions trip to China. Is it going to be okay for me to go? And the doctor said, of course. And she went to the group of people in her church that were going with her. And she said, I'm pregnant. Is it okay if I go? And they said, of course. And she went to my stepdad. She said, sweetheart, we're going to have a baby. Is it okay if I still go to China? And he said, yes. And so they finally get to China, they ride these buses and stuff and get to the rural village, and they're hundreds of miles anywhere from any place that is a city. And within 4 days of being in China, my mom begins to have hemorrhaging and she loses her baby. And now she's put on bed rest. And my mom began to talk about how this was God's glory. Because all of a sudden the villagers, they never experienced this before like this. And so they would go inside where my mom was on bed rest and they would gather around her and my mom would talk to them. My mom shared a story of a Chinese woman named Lucy who was on fire for God. And she knew that my mom needed prayer. And so one day, very early in the morning when it was still dark out, so that she wouldn't be seen, she climbed a mountain and she prayed for my mom. My mom lost the baby in China. And my mom talks about how that's God's glory. She said, I will never know the impact that left on that village. The people who asked me about Jesus, the people who I spoke to about Jesus, the people. My mom had every opportunity to be blaming God. God, you told me to go on this missions trip, and now you're taking something from me. God, she had every opportunity to point her finger at God and to turn her back on God. She had every opportunity to be mad and to be upset and to be bitter, but she calls it God's glory. You want to know why she calls it God's glory? Because she knew where to look in the middle of her trial. She knew where to trust in the middle of her trial. If there was a fourth point that I could share with you, it would be just that. Know where to look. Because it's too easy to look at this circumstance. It's too easy to focus just on this. It's too easy to focus it, and then you get real close to it, and it's all you want to look at. It's all you want to see, and God's just saying, shift your eyes to me, because he has something for you that's bigger. He has something for you that's better, and you're not going to understand it, and you're not going to even get the answers that you want from me, but I can point you to the one who can give it to you. I'm not going to say the right things that I wish I could say, but I can point you to the one who can. Look to him. Look to